Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. JC here with another video on Action Taimanin. Today we're gonna start a new mini-series where we explore how to use every color, both for supporters and character skills. But before we start, don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe if you need the content. So, first of all, we're gonna start with the color red, which is probably the easiest one to build for newer players. So for that, we're gonna check all the supporters, well, not all the supporters, but basically the strongest ones. And, oh boy, red for beginners is extremely useful and extremely good. First of all, we have Futabayui. Futabayui is an excellent supporter because it increases the particle charge by up to 50%, and it's an R supporter, you're gonna get it. And this allows you to abuse active skills for weapons and ulti spam. It is super useful. And not always you're gonna use the supporter, but when you need those particles, it's extremely good to have this one. Then we have Sanada Homura. Homura is going to increase your damage while reducing increasing the damage taken, but it doesn't really matter if you just delete the enemy, so it's really useful. Then we have both Rika and Faust, which are going to increase critical rate for melee and range attacks respectively. And Faust in particular has a really good active, which you want to use against machine enemies. Then we have Mitsuki. Mitsuki is kinda useful, but on niche scenarios, when you have a really strong active that you want to abuse, you want to use the supporter on a subslot so that you keep spamming that active. But it is extremely niche for the most part, though still pretty useful when you want to fulfill that niche. And then we have Arika. Arika is amazing because she increases damage by up to 30% against bosses. And one of the best supporters that we have in the game, Arabella for blue, is just her, but 10% more. And this is a Zara, you're gonna get it, so be sure to grab this one. And this one, increase critical damage of range attacks by 16% up to 32%. Yeah, also pretty good. Although the damage increase is only limited to crits, it's still pretty easy to achieve if you do the right build. So keep an eye on this one. All the SRs for red are extremely useful. One of the Rs is really good. Then there's a bunch of good ones. I'm going to just highlight them. Like, for example, we have Major, which deals devastating damage on the active. And not to mention that the passive is pretty good because it makes you extremely tanky against machines. Then we have Hibiki, Fuma Hibiki, which is going to be extremely good for characters who like to debuff and spam their basics. But in most cases, you're not going to use Hibiki. Maybe at the start, especially with Asagi. Yosora, while useful, it has dropped tremendously because she only gives healing, so it's not that great nowadays. Let's see. Oh yeah, Spica. Spica is super important because Spica is going to buff both crits of range and melee attacks. Critical rate for melee attacks and critical damage for range attacks. But it's always providing something for your character, which is also useful. And not to mention that she is one of the few invincibility supporters, so you want to have this on the main. It's really useful. Then we have Nino, which gives you 30% damage increase on range attacks when you have it 5 out of 5. Extremely good. Then we have Shirayuki, which gives you 36% damage increase when equipped to a demon. Super useful. Aoi, pretty good because she also reduces cooldown of the supporter on the main and reduces damage taken from melee attacks. Though it is a little bit restrictive because it's only melee attacks, it's still pretty useful. Then we have Ingrid. This Ingrid most players are not gonna get nowadays because it was from a campaign. But if you have it, this is amazing. It charges your particles like crazy. And it's also, even though it has a 50% penalty to ultimate damage, it is used on ultimate damage builds. So be sure to use this if you have it. Then we have Granny. Granny is basically the improved version of Nino. It just gives you a couple more effects, but it doesn't really matter. You don't use them for the most part. You only want that range damage increase. It's amazing. Then we have Vareta. Vareta is pretty good because it gives you between 10 and 20% damage increase to all enemies, which is kind of a smallish, but it also gives you critical damage increase against all enemies between 50 and 30%. And that's going to be a 50% damage increase when you crit. It's amazing. It's really, really good. Then we have Yamato Susune. Yamato Susune is one of the most important F2P supporters in the game, and I hope that we are able to get some copies of this with the story archive because every player needs this one. Why? Because nowadays most characters are able to debuff the enemies in some way, shape, or form, and this gives you up to 40% damage increase when you have when the enemy has a debuff. And it also, on the active, ensnares all enemies, which immobilizes them, and restore your HP, your lost HP, which is amazing. HP recovery is super, super useful. Not to mention that the cooldown being 50 seconds, it's pretty good. When it's 60, that's bad, but 50 is usable for sure. So, grab it. Sharia is okay defensively, but in most situations you don't want to go defensively. Even so, worth mentioning. Go with Sharia if you want to build a tank for anti-human. Then, Momo Chinagi, one of the balanced supporters. She's going to enhance suppress type characters, increasing both damage and damage reduction up to 24%. Extremely good, but please try to equip this on the subslot. It's better on the subslot. Then we have Shizuru, which you're gonna get a chance to grab this on the paid pack for Shizuru's renewal. Keep that in mind. But it is kind of similar, a little bit different. It's more offensive to Nagi. What's the thing? She increases damage dealt to debuff enemies by up to 26% and increases the critical rate of suppressed type characters by up to 26% again. So it's really good for suppressed type characters who want to crit and that are able to debuff the enemy, which nowadays is not that rare. You can even do that with a supporter. So it's not a high priority, but it's definitely useful. Keep that in mind. Then, of course, New Year Shiranui. Extremely good. She reduces and increased damage, or melee damage, by 13% up to 26%. And she also has an extra passive and an active, which are just devastating, giving you a ton of damage when you evade, and increases damage on a certain area. So it's just devastating. It has a ton of damaging potential. Then we have White Feather Asuka. White Feather Asuka is the most broken supporter in the game. It just shreds super armor like crazy, and it gives you a ton of damage if you feel both traits, Machine and Suppress. There are only 2 characters in the game that get this benefit, but even if you get only one, that's still 24% damage increase, which is appreciated. And the extra passive is really what makes it devastating, by just destroying the super armor and restoring HP. Then we have Stella, which is a 30% damage increase. It's just Homura, but without the demerit. Super, super useful. Then we have Lina. Lina is super important when you're building a demon team or a demon character who wants to fight against a demon. It's going to give you 40 what? 48% damage increase? 48? Yeah, 48. Because we doubled those numbers. So it is just devastating, and it's super, super good. Let's see, who else do we have? Rin. Extremely limited. Doubtful that you'll get this one until we get the renewal. So this is like Nagi, but for humans. Instead of being suppressed, it's for humans. It gives you between 12 and 24% damage reduction and damage increase against all enemies if you're a human. So it is pretty good. Then we have Yukina. One of the best supporters on Red. And when I say the best supporters, it's the one that you want to have on a really, really aggressive team because it gives you 40% skill damage increase. That's amazing. Not to mention the active is not that bad because it instant death some enemies. It is a random chance, but still pretty good to just eliminate those. Then we have Ana Rose, also kind of difficult to get. You can get one copy guaranteed, but you need more than one copy. This increases HP of demons and increases their critical rate as well. And it also has an extra passive that gives you a chance to restore HP when you defeat an enemy. It's really, really useful. Then Minasaki's somewhat niche, but worth mentioning because it gives a huge damage increase. It's 40%, but the condition is that the enemy is poison. So not everyone is going to use it, but it's really possible to use it, and not that difficult, actually. Especially because poison lasts a ton. And then we have Holy Knight Kirara. Holy Knight Kirara is basically Susune, but a little bit different. Because instead of giving you a burst heal, she's going to give you a regen, which constantly heal you. And she's going to freeze enemies, and she's going to make an area where you gain a speed increase. So it's definitely worth using, but a little bit difficult to get right now. Seasonal supporters are not rerun that often. Melt is a really useful supporter that F2P supporter, by the way, that many people just neglect because the activation condition is to have buffs, but there's characters who can easily give buffs. So for each buff, you're going to increase your damage by 10%. And you may say, well, that's not bad. You can get a 30%. No, you can get even more than that if you do things right, if you do a buffing team, which is pretty doable. And she, with the active, gives you a buff. Though the cooldown and the buff are not the best thing in the world, it's going to increase your damage by another 10%. Keep that in mind. So, well, not 10%. Increases fortitude and reduces damage taken. That's 2 buff. It's 20%. It's a 20% buff whenever you use the active. And then, who else do we have? Shizuru. Dancer Shizuru is extremely niche. I won't talk about her right now. Okay, this one is actually worth mentioning because it's about disarm. This increases damage against disarm enemies by up to 50%, which is extremely strong. And she can disarm the enemies for 10 seconds on a 52-second cooldown. That's amazing. So you may want to use it with characters who are able to disarm, like Saika or Inage. Then we have Evil Flower Asuka, also a seasonal supporter, also difficult to get nowadays, but while her main passive effects are not that useful, she is able to increase the performance of a party of machine type enemies. That's why she's worth mentioning. But we have 4 machines, so maybe it's not the pinnacle of support right now for machines, but it is worth mentioning. Then we have Indomitable Fuba Tokiko. This one is, for the most part, a supportive type supporter that you put on the main slot because it reduces the speed of the enemies and increases the normal damage, the damage of normal attacks by up to 30%. That's good. And a 40% speed reduction is amazing. Even though it's 3 seconds, it's constantly going to do that. So it's still very useful. And the extra passive increases the damage of your allied character's range attacks. So by 10%. That's not the most busted thing in the world, but it's helping out the whole team, and that's useful. Then we have Gear Shisui, a limited supporter, similar to Indomitable Fuma Tokiko. This one is extremely niche, but extremely good when you hit the niche, because it increases the damage of familiar type attacks by 25 to up to 50%, and speed by 10%. After using a skill, there is a 10% chance to recover 4% or 8% of lost HP. Yeah, it's really, really useful, especially with Shisui. So consider getting it. Not only that, it has an extra passive if you put it on the main. Damage taken is reduced for all suppressed type allies by up to 30%. It's just disgustingly good. But you may not think much about it because maybe you don't use that much familiar damage, but Shizui does use that, and it is really, really strong. And not to mention the active. The active increases your damage by up to 50% with a debuff. It's extremely good. Then, Galilim, also a really, really good character, supporter that you want to use. It is like Momochi Nagi, splitting damage and damage increase, but it's FTP, and the activation condition is pretty easy, and any character can equip it. You just have to debuff the enemy, and that's it. Not to mention that the active has a really nice effect, which increases the duration of debuffs by 15%. For 15 seconds, any debuff that you inflict is going to last 50% more. That's really good. Then we have Spinel. Spinel, ignore the passive. The extra passive is what you want. It increases the damage of the whole demon team tremendously by 28%. That's basically the effect a main supporter could, the main effect of a supporter would give you. But this is for the whole team. And not to mention, the active stops the enemy. As long as they're not immune to speed reduction, they're going to stop the enemy completely. It is amazing. Then we have Prophet Eleanor. It is one of the few supporters that increases critical rate for everything, just like that. And this one increases damage proportionate to the number of enemies afflicted with wet, but it is not the best thing because you have to use wet and you have to either use Eleanor on your team or have the supporter on the main. Even so, the critical rate increase makes this worth mentioning. And basically, just by committing to putting this on the main, you get some form of damage increase, which is also nice. And then, Fuyutsuki. Similar to Yukina, one of the best suppressed type supporters, probably the best in the game, because it gives you a huge damage increase. The only thing that you have to take into consideration is that you have to fight mobs. If you don't fight mobs, you don't want to use this supporter. You don't use it against Master Taimanin, you don't use it against Worm Knights. You need mobs, because every time an enemy dies, increases damage of all enemies, or against all enemies, by 4% up to 8% for 90 seconds at a 50% chance. So not every buff is going to be guaranteed, but basically it's not that difficult to keep the buff up because of the long duration. You have a minute and a half to just get another stack, so it's pretty useful. And it increases damage against bosses just because. That's amazing. This is the supporter that gives you the most damage in the game right now. So, yeah, you definitely want this one, trust me. The snare on the active is usable. It's not that great because it's only 5 seconds, but it's usable. Then, we have Evil Bodyguard Momochi Nagi. Evil Bodyguard Momochi Nagi gives you a speed increase. Well, actually multiple speed increase, up to 3. And it's gonna be, let's see, 4... that's gonna be like 12% speed increase at minimum. At maximum is gonna be 8, so that's 16, 24. 24% speed increase. Pretty good. You need to keep doing combos because the duration is kinda short, but it's doable, depending on the character that you use. Not to mention that it gives you a 20% damage reduction, which is nice, but it's not permanent. It's constantly going to be activated, which is usable. And if you put it on the main, it's going to increase the damage of assist type characters, which is nice. Then, let's see, what else? For God, is this useful. So, this one might not be as strong as Galilim, but it's easy to use because there's a ton of demons in the game. It gives you damage and damage increase. But the damage increase is only for skill. So you don't want to use this with a character which abuses basics. Keep that in mind. And this one has invincibility. The invincibility of this character is extremely short. It's just to avoid a devastating attack. Keep that in mind. Then, Francis. God, is this useful. So, Francis gives penetration to suppress type characters. Just like that. It's disgustingly good. And it gives you a decent damage increase to disarm enemies. And she has a chance to disarm enemies. This is not easy to abuse, the extra passive. But if your character already naturally disarms the enemies, then the damage increase is appreciated by a lot. I mean, if Saika was suppressed, this would be amazing. Unfortunately, she isn't. But you can put Saika in the team and use it with a suppressive character. That's something you can do. Then, Kung Fu Mai. Kung Fu Mai is basically Stella for... Stella for... I was just checking the numbers. It's a Stella for suppressive characters, but it also increases HP restoration by 50%. Well, between 25 and 50%, which is really, really good. Not to mention that she has her own HP recovery on the active. Though the duration is, the cooldown is extremely long, there's the benefit that you actually get HP restoration, so you're gonna survive a little bit more. So it's fine. And remember, this HP restoration is getting buffed by this other passive, so that's good. That's good. No, we don't use this one. And yeah, that's all the supporters, okay? So, basically, your targets should be, at the very beginning, Rika and Faust, along with Homura and Arika. Those are the ones that you want to use. If you need survivability, you want to use things like Momochi, New Year Shiranui, what's the name? Rin. Where is it? Gal Lilim, Kirara, and... Well, Kirara, Kung Fu Mai, and Susune. Because the first ones are going to give you damage increase and damage reduction. And the latter ones, the latest ones, are going to give you HP recovery along with damage, which is extremely good. So, if you want to go extremely aggressive, glass cannon-ish, you're going to be using something like, let's see, Susune, because that's a 40% damage increase just cause it's really, really amazing. You're also going to use Lina, super useful. You're going to use Asuka. It's good if she hits the niche, but basically just because of the super armor shred is good. Yukina and Fuyutsuki, yeah. Those are the ones that you want to use. And a highlight to Spinel, because she increases the damage of the whole party by almost 30%. It's just amazing. So, now, let's check super quickly all the characters. We're going to do this kind of fast. I'm going to give you, this is going to be a long video. But I'm going to give you the highlights of how to use everyone on red. Not everyone is going to use the basic enhancer or the triple color skill, because we're focusing mainly on pure builds, and the basic enhancers can be used anywhere, but there's some that actually deserve a highlight. So starting with Asagi. Asagi really doesn't want to go red. Satsujinka isn't the best damaging skill. Besides, it can focus one enemy, yes, but you see that it creates two clones and they separate. That's the thing that happens if there are multiple enemies, and you don't want that for the most part, because its damage is not amazing, like super explosive. On the other hand, Shunshinka deals a decent amount of damage, not the same damage as a pure color skill, but it also gives you a buff on speed increase. Since Asagi is a character that focuses a lot on what's the name? On her basic attacks, you may use the basic enhancer. Kojinka is also really, really good, no matter the color, so be sure to use it here. And On top of Kojinka, we can use Munika on red to reduce the speed of the enemy. Disgustingly good. And look at this duration and this percentage. It's just amazing. So yeah, you want to use these skills together. Basically, that's kind of it. Like other skills do not pair that well on red. For Sakura, Sakura is a little bit more difficult. There is a niche, but honestly, the problem is Nether Dive. Nether Dive doesn't have the biggest AoE. Honestly, it needs a buff to be a little bit bigger. Even though now it does 2 hits, it's not great. Especially with the... it's knockdown. I thought it was knockback. No. Yeah, but if the enemy moves and they get out of range, that's not nice. So, anyways, you start with Shadow Tangle to lock the enemy in place, and you get a damage increase on those enemies that are snared. But you only have like 4 seconds to do this, so you have to be extremely quick. Then Shadow Shift. Shadow Shift is going to give you a damage increase, a 10% damage increase, and then you Nether Dive. That's about it. Honestly, Sakura is not the greatest to go red, but every character can do all colors, so that's a thing to consider. Then another one that isn't that great, but there's utility to this one. So, who is it gonna be? It's Yuki. Yuki has 2 things in her kit, basically, that work pretty well on red. Number 1, Hirai 10. Hirai 10 is going to give you a huge damage reduction, a huge speed reduction, which is amazing. I just said that with Asagi. It's exactly the same numbers, so it's definitely worth using. And we also have Rajudan. Rajudan is going to double the frequency of consecutive attacks when doing this. And why is that good? Because you're going to break the super armor super easily, you're going to deal a lot of damage, and if you use White Feather Asuka, this is going to be devastating. Honestly, I didn't find anything else super good to put on the last lot. I'll let you decide what to put, but I just put Rai Mei just cause. It's not my favorite option, but it's there. Then, Rinko. I mean, Rinko. Poor Rinko. I didn't change her. So, what's the issue with Rinko? Let me check. Yeah, Wind Slicer gets ruined on red. It does a different animation, which deals less hits, and it has a smaller AoE, so you don't want it, actually. Spatial Rift, no. Kaede no Kata, and reduce the... Oh, yeah. This is basically it. But maybe you want to use the shift. I'll explain in a moment. So, you can change the combinations because it's not easy to use Kaede no Kata. Well, it is not that difficult. You use Kaede no Kata to get a speed increase, and then you immediately do the follow-up attack to stop the enemy for a second, and then you use your pure red skill to deal devastating damage, which is fine. Another combo is to use the shift, then Violet Slash, and then the pure red skill. Why the shift? Because of the short cooldown, or the fact that it's going to teleport you in front of the enemy. And it's really easy to abuse these two together. Honestly, I do not recommend Rinko Red in particular. Like, these 3 are not the greatest on red. They can pull it, but not my cup of tea, you know? Then we have Murasaki. Murasaki has a big weakness here in the form of Rengenki. Rengenki is going to lock you in place, and this is good against big enemies, but if the enemy moves or if the enemy is small, you might miss. So yeah, it deals a good amount of damage, but you need to know which enemy you're going to hit this with. Then we have Tentacle Hold, which is going to give you damage reduction, or you can use Tentacle Anchor. Both of them are good. This one just puts you in front of the enemy, which can be useful for Rengenki, and it deals some amount of damage. Fujin no Jin is super important, but you have to pilot the character, and you don't want this on BR, because you don't want to do counters from BR. But this one is going to give you HP recovery. That's why it's really, really good. You can also change Rengenki for Senpu. Senpu is going to give you a huge damage reduction. So that's extremely useful. Even though you may not have enough damage, you're gonna be extremely tanky, even on red. I know that everyone gives a lot of credit to green, but honestly, she can pull her tank shenanigans in any color. Then let's go to Sue. Sue is going to be a damage dealer. Honestly, she is a damage dealer. She needs HP recovery, guys. Keep that in mind. So put some supporters that give her HP recovery. So what is she going to do? Basically, you're going to be using Ryurinko. Ryurinko is going to give you a damage increase on red. Then you can use either Shiryuga. Yeah, no. If you have the 4 slot, you use Senrenka to get a damage increase. Shiryuga, no, I'm checking the duration. It can be like this or like this. So my recommendation is to use Shinryuga to put that 30% defense reduction onto the enemy, which lasts 10 seconds. Then you increase your damage using Senrenka. And lastly, you use Shunrenka to deal devastating damage. How? 6 seconds. If you can use any of these two. My recommendation is to go with this one because it gives you more damage increase and it gives you the super armor and gives you damage reduction on top of that. Guys, this is the only one that gives you damage reduction when using the super armor. Yeah, because when a slow effect is applied, reduce damage taken. Yeah, everyone says when she has super armor, it reduces her damage. It's like no, this one gives her damage reduction. But anyways, it is extremely aggressive. You can use this, and this. Whichever combination, whichever combo you want. And her awakening skill, Kokuryuha, is not that bad. Even though it only gives you super armor, I mean, it's a tracking attack that is going to hit all enemies. That's pretty useful in some scenarios. So keep that in mind. Honestly, those are the skills that you want to use for the most part. Let's see. What else? Shiranui. So Shiranui is extremely good on red. Unfortunately, she doesn't want to use Senko. Like, Senko is not great because of its natural AoE. With the weapon, it gets a little bit better with the seasonal weapon, but Rondo it's just better. The AoE is better. The healing is better. Even though it might deal less damage technically, it's just better because it hits more enemies and you heal more. So yeah, it's definitely better to use Rondo, but you can also use Senko. So Getsuin is extremely good for wake clearing, so be sure to grab this. And it gives you a critical rate increase. If you're not on VR, this is useful. And you can use either Genejin or Shinen Shinsoku, because these are going to increase your DPS. Geneseka is not that great because you have to receive a hit, so don't use it. The basic enhancer you might use, but it is like whatever for the most part. Emily on red, it is, I mean, honestly, the best option is Emily blue, but for Emily, what can you do? You can equip homing bullet every time. Like, it is one of those few triple color skills which actually works always. So yes, you can do this. Increased critical rate. Yeah, Aegis Tackle is not bad on red because you then transition into Axe Impact, which gives you critical damage increase. Which, if you don't crit, you don't get that damage increase. So you want that critical rate increase. And besides, it's both of these are melee attacks and they are close range, so they pair well. But be careful, especially with our enemies that have super armor. Counter bomb. This is probably the best effect of counter bomb, but you don't want to do a counter. The healing field is extremely good on any color, especially on red. It increases the restoration frequency, so you're gonna heal more. Drone shocker extremely good for control. Ground shocker extremely good for control, and drone shocker too extremely good for control. And zero system, well, I mean, auto attacking, auto farming basic enhancers are the best, so I cannot just ignore this one. So yeah, I don't recommend going with Emily Red. Yeah, she can deal devastating damage. It is silly, but you need to be in front of the enemy. That's not something that you want with Emily. Then Shiranui. What is Shiranui going to do? Well, we have Gale Slash. Gale Slash is going to heal a ton of HP, and now it's really useful because there's few chances of you not hitting the enemy in front of you. Then we have Kamitachi. Kamitachi is going to reduce the speed of the enemy by 30% for 10 seconds. Really good. Stormfang increases your speed by 20%. It's amazing to use this one. God's Eye, you know it. It gives you a ton of buffs and it increases your speed. Really, you want to use this one. If possible, and if you... what's the name? If you crit. That's also a thing. But that's where it stops. You don't want Spiral Red. You might use the basic enhancer, but it's as useful as any other basic enhancer for most characters. Then, Oboro. Oboro has options. She's extremely good. You want to use Wicked Slasher and Hypnosis Seal. Then, for your third one, you want to use Flash Step if you're piloting the character. If you're letting it out of farm, preferably you want to use the basic enhancer so that you use these skills ASAP. Then, on the last slot, if you want to go with 4 slots, you can use Carnage Dance or Blooming Carnage. She has a ton of skills that she can equip that are useful on red. This one, it's not that great on red. It just decreases the target's damage dealt. It's not that useful. And not to mention launching attack. Those are not great. So, yeah. Anyways, let's go to the next one. Asuka. Asuka is a little bit more complex than other characters because she can be melee or range, but she doesn't pair well her skills and effects on red. So here I have Dust Cyclope, which is going to increase your critical rate by 20%, which is useful. It's useful when you can crit. Then we have Rendering Storm, which deals a ton of damage. Extremely good, but it can be interrupted. Be careful on how you use this one, okay? Then we have Wind Slicer. Since you're going to expose yourself with Rendering Storm, it's very likely that immediately after you evade and you can activate this. And this increases the range, which is extremely good because you can reposition easily while still dealing damage. Kill 'em all missiles is a good offensive skill because it tracks the enemies and is going to deal a good amount of damage. But unfortunately, the red effect only knocks back the enemy, which is not that great. The basic enhancer is extremely useful because it changes her playstyle, and that's it. Bomb Escape you don't want to use on this color, and Spiral Blast is worth considering if you are if you know that you're gonna take hits. You don't want to take hits with Asuka, but this is going to reduce the damage you take. So okay, it's not that bad, but you kinda wanna avoid it. So, yeah, it's odd. I know. So, there we have... And then we have Onisaki Kirara. Kirara isn't that great on red. Another character which has few uses. But, let me show you the best skills. Number 1, we have Freezing Zone, which is going to be similar to Asagi's Kojinka, because it reduces the speed of the enemy. But it also reduces their defense, which is pretty nice. And the duration is increased by 50% when you use red. Then we have Crystallize. While it is a counter, and we don't like counters, it is extremely aggressive and extremely useful. And Kirara is a slow character, which is obviously going to take hits. So using this is not that bad. So, it reduces the defense of the enemy by 30% for 10 seconds. Amazing. Lastly, there's 3 skills that you have to take into... Well, 4 that you have to take into consideration. The damaging skills. So, Freeded Edge, obviously, it has good damage and good range only to the front. Then, Leopard Sprint is going to deal an additional attack, so it's going to deal good damage. The basic enhancer is pretty good, especially paired with Frigid Zone, because you can do the combos, and the last combo deals devastating damage. And Glacier Drop, while the red effect is not useful, the AoE and damage is usable. So, well, then we have Ingrid. Ingrid. This is odd. Her Evil Bloom is really good, but at the same time really bad. It deals a good amount of damage. But you don't want to use this when the enemy has super armor. And if you're fighting BR, you're not going to crit, so it doesn't give you that much value. But then we have things like Evil Flare, which is going to reduce the enemy's speed. That utility is really useful. Then we have increased speed with Piercing Dragon. And also increase self-speed by 10%. It is basically the same, but a little bit different. So both of these are useful. They are kind of the same. I don't know why Gremory changed the launcher for this. Or, well, maybe they should have changed this one instead because this is better or ish. I don't know, guys. It is kind of weird. Anyways, there's also Evil Heart Blast. Evil Heart Blast is really good on red because you're gonna deal much more damage because the attack frequency is increased by a ton. So yeah, this is a super good skill to break the super armor, and you can pair it with White or Asuka. Along with Evil Flare, these two are just amazing for that. So yeah. Then we have Noah. Noah has potential, but unfortunately I was trying to test it and I cannot see it because my Noah is level 81. Noah has a glaring weakness in red, and it's that she isn't able to heal. So you either need a healer or a supporter that heals. So keep that in mind. What do you want to use? You want to use Caroline's Malice, that is going to give you a 12% damage increase. You're going to use Sinister Living Dummy, which is going to give you a 15% damage increase. And then Juliet's Snare. So, preferably, you start with Malice, then you use a Dummy, and then you use Snare. You have to preferably cancel Malice before if you want to finish with Juliet's Snare, because the duration is not that long for these ones. So that's something to take into consideration. So yeah, that's about it, because there's other things that you can do like Debilate, but for the most part you're not gonna need it. Like right now we don't have that many enemies that restore HP and abuse it. Maybe event enemies, but other than that, So yeah, it is a character that has a niche, but I just can't see it because of my current Noah. Then, Astaroth. Disgustingly good in every single color. This is a character that always wants to have a basic enhancer. I strongly recommend you do not use her without a basic enhancer. For Astaroth, you can go close range or long range. If you go close range, consider using Prominence because it reduces the target's defense by 30%. If you think you're not gonna get hit, and you actively avoid getting hit, then do not use Prominence. Instead, use Lava Servant. Lava Servant is going to be always useful. Fire Blast for ranged attacks. Hellblaze, you always want this equipped. It's going to deal a lot of damage. And if you want to abuse Terror, you have to use Phoenix Dive and Flame Haze. The kind of builds that you can do on red are diverse, to say the least. So, depending on what you want to do, use any combination of those skills. Satellite Flare, while it reduces the damage, it is not that good even so. So, I don't recommend it. Like, this at least lets you kill the enemy super fast, but you don't want to activate it. Yeah, that's the thing. But you can use Usune because she's going to inflict debuffs. So, yeah, it's okay because you can heal. Then, Tokiko. So, Tokiko, what is she going to do? Honestly, she doesn't have that much. She stuns. She increases her critical rate. She stuns. Okay. You see where I'm going? What she can do is basically use Clairvoyance to reduce the defense of the enemy. And then you use Fang to just destroy the enemy. Even better if you have her limited weapon because it enhances red. But I know that's a high toll for for most players. So yeah, you want the Taimanin R Magpie because you don't want to get hit in the first place. You want to play range. And that's why we use this one. Here, the basic enhancer is actually important, just like Astaroth. Then we have Shizuru. I'm worried about Shizuru. because she's about to receive her renewal. But I hope that the rework doesn't change her red role drastically. So right now, right now she's Suru, is an extremely aggressive debuffer on red, because she has these three skills that are going to reduce the defense of the enemy by a ton, and you can use Sprout Garden to heal and reduce the speed of the enemy. So really, really useful. There's also the chance that you use Chasing Strike, which increases your damage by 15% for 6 seconds on red. But, there's an issue with this skill, and it's the animation and the fact that you have to position yourself in front of the enemy after using this, which is kind of a demerit under most situations. Unless the enemy doesn't have super armor, this is not that useful for the most part. The damage increase is appreciated, but positioning right in front of the enemy, not what I want with her, because she's squishy. Trust me, she is squishy. And one thing to mention, her Eye of Dawn enhances Rose Rondo. So yeah, you want to use this one if possible on a red build. Felicia is a character that wants to crit. Honestly, she's pretty useless on red unless she crits, because her damage is completely different if she doesn't crit. So she has this skill which deals a huge amount of damage whenever it crits, as you can see. And you have to use Vampiric Zone so that you're able to heal. You basically full heal whenever you land your Orchi Nagi's crit while the enemy's debuff. And we use Bloodsight just to increase our speed. And then you can use a basic enhancer, the one that you find the most appealing. And yeah, that's it. The other skills are not that useful on red. Let's see. Then we have... Oh, Micah. So she has options. For the most part, you're going to use Death from Above with Ruthless Explosion and Carpet Bombing. Ruthless Explosion is your starter because you're going to reduce the defense of the enemy. Then use Death from Above to just decimate the enemies. And then Carpet Bombing is just your escape tool that is going to give you protection when someone gets too close to you. Then we have Pile Flare. It is not my favorite due to the animation. I don't like to get in front and then behind. But it has a damage increase, which is appreciated. So you might use it if you want. The other skills are not that great on red, so I do not recommend that you use these ones. And then we have Rin. Rin also has options. Let me show you. So we're going to start with the Vol Whip combo. For this one we use Denki on red. It gives you a damage increase for 10 seconds, which is extremely good as you see. Vault Rush, because it's a good damaging skill as an AoE attack. This is going to clear waves of enemies, especially with the range increase. And Vol Whip is just your boss killer. It is amazing at that. But then we have Vol Hook. Vol Hook is something that you can use. I don't like it too much, but the speed reduction, the 20% speed reduction, is not something to scoff at. So keep that in mind. Soaring Swallow, not that great. Vol Spin, not that useful on red for normal content or even challenging content. Maybe PvP, but otherwise, no. And this one, no, it's a launcher. Then we have Sora. Okay, so to use Sora on red, what do? You use Chosen. Why Chosen? Because it gives you speed increase and you're gonna attack faster. You can equip the basic enhancer to be faster, but Firefox is extremely important because it's your healing skill. Many people disregard this one and they just think Sora has Fox God Arrow as their healing skill, but this one is pretty good. It does heal a good amount if you deal good damage. Then Yudachi. Yudachi is going to allow you to do wave clearing, but sometimes it won't be good because you have to lure the enemies into the right position so that you're able to hit all of them. Otherwise, you might just focus one enemy. And yeah, that's about it. This one increases your damage, but you need to take a hit with a ranged attacker. Yeah, that's not what you want to do, trust me. Then, Flare is going to make you tankier? Well, thank you, Gremory, but no. A Celestial Fox is good, but not. The idea is to do a rainbow build, not a pure color build, so keep that in mind. Then, um, Anne Rose. Anne Rose is extremely good. So she has like 4 skills, or maybe 5 that she can use. So, number 1, we have Rymax, devastating, super useful, and to guarantee that you crit, use the action bound. Super, super great combo. Devour is there to do an HP recovery. It's not that useful for other purposes on PvE, but the HP recovery is good enough for you to equip this. And then we have Fang and the basic enhancer. These are really good. Fang because it gives you a damage increase, and the basic enhancer is useful. Honestly, it's not that bad, her basic enhancer. So you can. This is more of a thing that you can select, and it's an extra, especially if you have the 4 slot, because this is what I would recommend on the main if you only have 3. So then we have Aina for Aina. So triple burst, really really good, but you have to keep in mind her AoE. It is a straight line. So if the enemies are surrounding you, this is not going to be as useful. Similar to Sora, you have to lure them into the right spot so that you can use this skill. Then we have Bulletstorm. Bulletstorm is devastating and you can clear waves of enemies super easily, and also inflict tremendous damage to bosses, because on Red she's going to summon a laser drone that deals even more damage. And then Drone Shooter. Drone Shooter summons a laser drone on Red, and it also heals you. It creates a healing area, which is useful. You can use Bullet Dance, but this is more of a wave clearing skill on Red. And yeah, that's about it. Basically, those 3 skills are the good ones, and Bullet Dance is optional if there's multiple waves of enemies. Then, where is it? Oh, Saika. So Saika is a really good character. With Takeover and Calamity Over, you're going to increase your speed. You start with Takeover, and then you transition into Calamity Over, and you're gonna get a huge amount of speed increase. But since it is the same buff, you don't want it to use immediately. Instead, you do Takeover, you do a bunch of attacks, and since it has a long duration, by the time this is finishing, or in the middle of it, you can perform Calamity Over to keep that speed increase up, so that you deal as many hits as possible. Then we have Hit Kick. Hit Kick is really, really good. It deals a ton of damage. What's the issue with this one? That you have to be in front of the enemy. That's the thing. And you barely move. You do move, but not that much. So you want to use this against big enemies, or enemies that have enough super armor to come at you. Then, do we have something else that we can use? I mean, Quake Stomp is good enough if you have just that much damage, but other than that, I wouldn't recommend it. Like, it's better to use it with the 3 colors. Then, Shisui. Shisui is extremely good on Red. So she has a ton of skills on her kit that works perfectly on Red. So number 1, Light of Explosion. No debate about that, it deals a ton of damage. Then we have Natural Light, which is going to increase her speed and recover her HP. Bombs Away gives her defense if you want to go defensive on Red, which is possible. And then we have, the Arrow of Light reduces the enemy's speed by 20%. That's a lot. Then, Guardian's Touch is going to increase your speed, and this decreases the cooldown. So, with these 2, you're going to become extremely tanky. Guardian Charge reduces the enemy's speed. That's also good utility. Power Engage for auto farming. I mean, you can do so many combinations on Red. This one is pretty good. Tag Team performs an additional attack at the end of the skill. It's not that great, honestly. It's a launching skill, after all. So, but basically anything else other than Tag Team and the other colors are gonna be good to go. You can equip those on any combo, trust me. Preferably, well, I'll just tell you like two combos. You can use Arrow of Light, Light of Explosion. If you don't need the heal, you can change this for Guardian Charge. If you need the healing, you use Natural Light. And if you go defensive, you go Guardian Touchdown with Bombs Away. It's just like that. And Natural Light. For Eleanor is going to be using also a ton of her skills. Mainly for damage, you want to use Geyser Burst, Acid Rain, and Reflective Ray. Acid Rain has a ton of multi-hits, deals a decent amount of damage and debuff the enemy. Geyser Burst is going to pull the enemies into the whirlpool, also deals a ton of hits, it's really good. This one deals a ton of heals, deals a ton of damage, stun locks the enemy, it provides a ton. If you have the weapon, even better because it ensnares the enemy. If you have Treasure of the Deep Sea, even better because you use it after Acid Rain and it deals more damage. If you want to abuse Wet, you use Spirit Blast. It's possible to use Feral Spirit, but I don't recommend it because that's a follow-up attack. So yeah, these are the 4 skills that you want to use. And Aqua Curtain is there if you want, not because of the color skill effect, but rather because of the immunity to range attacks. It's just that useful. Then, Heviko. Heviko is another weak user of red, but let me tell you what she can do. So, she can start by using Octopus Sever to get in front of the enemy, immediately evading and using Octopus Field to deal a ton of damage because it increases the attack frequency after receiving a buff. And then you just use Octopus Ink Bullet to destroy the enemy super quickly. Though Octopus Ink Bullet AoE is not that great, it really needs to be increased to be useful because the animation is not bad. It's just that the AoE is basically single target, so yeah, it is not the best thing. Octopus Choke, even with one color, is useful when you want to snare the enemy. And Tentacle Angle is very, very good because it gives you a huge damage increase. So be sure to use this one if you want. You can actually start with Angling, Field, and Ink Bullet, but you want to be near the dummy so that you can use Octopus Field. Then, we start with the interesting ones. So, Spinel. Spinel has a bunch of good skills that she can use on red. So, this Dazzling Strike is good because you use it mid-skill, mid-basic combo, so it's really easy to use and it deals not the most damage, actually, but she is strong, and if you buff her properly, she can deal devastating damage. Then, Crystal Burst reduces the enemy's defense by 30% for 10 seconds. You start with this and then you strike and you're gonna deal good damage. Ruby Reflector, also pretty good, but you need to take a hit. I never use it because of that, but if you're willing to take a hit with a character who doesn't recover HP naturally, you might. Then, Explosive Rampage. It is a devastating skill, especially for wave clearing, when using on red, because her range, her AoE becomes huge. Trust me, it is just amazing. And it runs towards the enemy. It's not teleporting skill, but it is pretty fast, so it's worth using. Then, do we have something else? Oh yeah, the basic enhancer for Spinel is definitely worth mentioning because it's extremely strong. You want to use this, if possible, if there are multiple waves of enemies. Even against single bosses is actually pretty good, but I mean, not everyone wants to use a basic enhancer. Then, we have Lina over here. For Lina, you're going to be using Cherry Blossom Storm with Storm Drive and Blinding Storm. Blinding Storm in your healing skill, be careful, this is not that great with bulky enemies because you cannot teleport behind them. Then you use Storm Drive to get the enemies near and also reduce their defense, and then you use Cherry Blossom Storm to shred even further the defense and deal a ton of damage. Late Bloomer is there, but it's really not necessary because you have the same debuff with Cherry Blossom Storm. Keep that in mind. The basic enhancer for Lina are both of them pretty good, so you can use them. And this one, it is useful just because of the knockback paired with the cooldown reduction. It's good enough because it gives you a little bit of control over the mobs. But as I mentioned, you preferably use this on a rainbow build. Then, Lapis. I know most of you are not using Lapis on red. And you should! It is the silliest thing ever! Because it deals an absurd amount of damage. You use Skydance with Moral Boost, and you're going to destroy your enemies. You go full damage, guys, with this one. Lastly, you equip Gem Support or Crystallize, and that's it. That's all you need, guys, and you're gonna deal a tremendous amount of damage. And be able to heal with these two. Piercing Dash, not that great on red. Comet Strike, reduces the damage of the enemy? No, it's the same as this one. But it's also a launching attack. No thanks. If you have to equip something on the 4th slot, maybe equip Comet Spear. I think it's gonna be the best thing that you can equip on the 4th slot on red. Then, Phantasma. Phantasma has two things she can do. She can equip Crunching Fear, Twister Dance, and Phantasmal Mirror, or she can equip Crunching Fear, Succubus Whisper, and Phantasmal Mirror, which is pretty good. She wants to mainly be using balance supporters, those that give you damage increase and damage reduction, because she has a leader skill that reduces the enemy's defense, the enemy's defense next to her, and she's also going to be able to recover HP. That's why you want to make her a little bit tankier than other characters. But of course she can go offensive, just that it's not necessary on red because of all that HP recovery and utility that she has. So yeah, going full offensive is not what I recommend with Phantasma. Just balance is just great with her. Then we have Francis. Francis is another character that is a little bit more difficult on red. Number one, she plays completely different if you have Revolving Bat. If you don't have Revolving Bat, you're not gonna use the Intoxicate status. Keep that in mind. Because Onigoroshi on red, it's terrible. It just stuns the enemy. It's not that great. Then we have Flame Flickle, which is going to give you super armor. And you have the basic enhancer to deal more damage. And you're also going to pair the basic enhancer with Flame Flickle's extra effect that deals double hits. So yeah, if you can do a build that revolves around basic attacks, that's actually pretty useful. For example, using maybe, I don't know, Hibiki, Susune with Hibiki is a good combo. And maybe something else that debuffs the enemy, because as you may have seen, we do not debuff the enemy with these two. So you need a way to debuff the enemy. And then we have this one that is meant to deal a lot of damage. Yeah, she can be a good damage dealer, but basically that's about it. You can use Radiant Shooting. Yeah, sure, it is there, but it is as reliable as the other skills. It just deals damage and it doesn't offer that much on utility. Ricochet Frenzy is not something to disregard because it is a counter that is going to keep attacking and it gives you defense. So even though the enemy might continue to hit you because they might have super armor, you are receiving less damage than you were before, so it's useful. Six Heaven's Demise is unusable because you have to finish your normal combo, as the normal combo is very long. And Demon Render is not useful because you just do knock up to the enemy, and that's not useful. Not to mention Onigoroshi. Then, Inage Natsu. Another one that has almost all her kit being able to use it. So, there's multiple combos that you can do with this one. The basic enhancer is okay to use if you want. Because it changes a little bit her gameplay, but it's not like game breaking. Then, Shadow Blink. Yeah, you can use this one, and this one if you want to abuse the puncture debuff. but I do not recommend that you do it. Even though red's main gimmick would be that, I do not recommend doing this specific build. Instead, I would go with Hole Puncher to deal damage, also Power Release and Thunderclap to reduce the defense of the enemy. Power Release so that they don't stop you on your tracks. But if you want HP recovery, you can change either of the two or equip on the 4th slot Restoration Smoke. Restoration Smoke is going to allow you to heal yourself, and it's really, really good. If you want to go utility for your team, you use a Small Cloud, Restoration Smoke, and Drifting Illusion. Drifting Illusion is useful. It's a triple color skill, but you decrease the defense of the enemy and you disarm them. That's good. That's really, really good. Preferably you use this on a rainbow skill, but it's strong enough not to disregard. And yeah, that's about it. Shadow Blink is not that strong for this, and these two are not that great. You can use, I mean, because they are not the right color, of course. So use everything else on the kit on any kind of combo that you want. As I mentioned, this for utility, this for attack, or no, Shadow Blink no. This for attack, or this 3 for attack, or maybe this and this, or this and this. Like, there's different combinations that you can do, but Shadow Blink, Shattering Blow, and Smoke Fan, don't use them on red. That's my recommendation. Then, the last one. Azusa. God, is this busted. So, Azusa doesn't have like many skills because, for example, Mirror Image, you don't want to use on red. And this one, you don't want to use on red. The Basic Enhancer, you don't want to use for the most part. So yeah, but the skills that she used on red. So there's two things that you can do. You use Shikigami or you do not use Shikigami. Basically that's it. So if you use Shikigami, you use Gale Slash and Dragonfly. First you evade, then you Gale Slash, and then you Dragonfly, and you deal devastating damage. You don't want to use Shikigami? Instead, you're going to use Gale Slash and Shadow Sprint, and then Dragonfly. We do this combo because the durations are 10 seconds on this one and 5 seconds on this one. You might do it the other way around, but you have less time to deal damage with Dragonfly. It's okay because this is going to allow you to get near the enemy, and now that you're near the enemy, you just Gale Slash and then you Dragonfly. But as I mentioned, the combo is better this way. And that's about it, guys. That's how to use red builds, okay? So basically, you want to use damage increase for the most part. There's a few exceptions. For example, Phantasma, she prefers to go balance. There's other characters, particularly squishy characters that have few ways of recovering HP, like Shizuru, who wants to go with balance supporters, okay? Keep that in mind. Most of them are gonna want to use Yamato to recover HP, or Kung Fu Mai, because those have HP recovery on the active. And Kirara, while useful, is a little bit slow on her HP recovery. I'm talking about characters who do not have healing skills on red. Keep that in mind. And yeah, if you want to do the most damage, if there are mobs, use Fuyutsuki. If not, use Yukina and Susune with anything else. Okay? So yeah, that's basically it. I hope you find this useful. It was a little bit long, but I think it's worth it. And I'll do the other 2 videos, of course, for green and red in the future. And let me know if there's something else that you would like to see. And I'm also going to be sharing with you tomorrow, Monday, the new a new video showing you gameplay of another game. But I'm also going to release a video for Taimanin. So keep an eye for that. So that's about it for today. I'll be seeing you next time. Bye.